Today we start the Glory Hunter series, a challenge to win the league and cups in all of the top 5 countries, as well as the Champions League and Europa League. And we have 20 seasons to do it. But I'm not going to do the international trophies like the World Cup, because international management sucks in Football Manager. Last year we started in the Bundesliga with Dortmund, so I ideally want to start at a team in another league. And when I asked you guys on Twitter or the YouTube community page, one team was mentioned quite a lot. So I went with a suggestion and I became the manager of AS Roma in Italy. After their win in the EC2 last year, they qualified for Europa League, and they boast a very strong squad with the likes of Tammy Abraham up front, Lorenzo Pellegrini as a star midfielder, and new signing Paulo Dybala. Plus they also have El Shaarawy, who for some reason I thought was in his mid-30s. Turns out he's only 29 and he's an asset for us this season. There isn't a lot of money in the budget though, but maybe enough for one signing. Now usually my transfers are looking at to developing youngsters or really expensive first teamers, but now we might not be at clubs very long. We could buy experienced older heads who cost a lot less money. But remember, we are checking the job center every single month. Because this is Glory Hunter, we could move to a club with better opportunities to complete one of our trophies at any moment. For now though, I've built a tactic to suit our Roma side. 3 at the back with 4 across the defensive midfield with 3 attackers and 1 main striker. I did feel that we were light at the back, so I went in and I put a bid in for Inter Milan defender De Vrij, who is in the last year of his contract, and eventually negotiated a good contract with the Dutchman. And before you know it, I got our guy. An extremely experienced centre-back aged 30 with great qualities and someone who brings the ball out of defence, all for around £12 million. Inter Milan are favourites for the title this season, with champions AC Milan in 2nd, and we are currently predicted in 5th. And in our first game of the season, it's Cremonese who we kick off our Glory Hunter journey against. With Wijnaldum injured, our lineup has slightly changed from our strongest 11, but I'm still confident as Tammy Abraham kicks off our season. And in my first game, we broke some records. Now don't get me wrong, the defence and as you will see from the goals we scored, the keeper we played were absolutely tragic. But we still completely dominated with 30 shots, and Tammy Abraham scored 4 goals on the opening day, and we broke the record for the biggest win in charge of my first ever match. We had Napoli coming up in our 4th game, but until that we can enjoy smashing Sassuolo 3-0, with Dybala picking up another 2 goals to take his tally to 4 goals in the first 2 games as well. And with a 2-0 win against Spezia, with their goalkeeper making 12 saves, we take a trip to Naples to play Napoli. But much to my surprise, it only took us about 13 minutes to open the scoring through Pellegrini. It stayed 1-0 until the second half, but once again, it was us who ripped up our opposition, and Lorenzo picked up a second, the bloody legend. What a start we had, winning all 4 games so far without conceding a goal. Our Europa League group has been drawn, and it's Feyenoord who lost in that EC2 final last year to Roma, as well as Fenerbahce and Ammonia from Cyprus. The transfer window closed and it's just 1 transfer in. After a 0-0 draw against Feyenoord, Tammy Abraham scored the only goal of the game in Turkey to give us 4 points from the first 2 games of the Europa League. I absolutely love him. Next up, it's the derby though versus Lazio. In what tends to be a very competitive match, we made it very clear for our local rivals having Tammy Abraham fit and on fire. He scored 2 goals before half-time, then he decided he wasn't done. He picked up his hat-trick right after, and getting a 4 for good measure, putting us 4-0 up. Lazio star striker Immobile did finally pick up a consolation goal, but it's early bragging rights to Roma and off to face the champions. We allowed Tammy the pleasure of welcoming Milan to the Olimpico just 11 minutes in, although soon after Roger Ibanez went in a bit overboard and we got a straight red card. Fear not though, because the Lazio goal we conceded is still the only league goal we have let in, and Tammy scores again. It's 2-0. With another win against Torino and then Monza is a semi-difficult run finish with some amazing results, and the games to come all being very winnable. The 2 Europa League games in October ended with 2 more wins and 5 more goals for Tammy Abraham. He was there to score 2 more goals against Lecce in a 3-0 win, and then he got 4 away to Sampdoria. And then in the Europa League he got himself yet another hat-trick against Fenerbahce, scoring 9 goals in the first 5 matches of this competition and helping us guarantee qualification for the group alongside Feyenoord. After Mady Camara got himself a straight red card, we dropped our first first points in the Serie A against Bologna. And after 11 games, we still sit top, just 4 points ahead of Atalanta, while Juventus sit bottom of the league, only just managing to finally get into positive points. Oh, and Tammy Abraham has 18 goals so far in the league as well. Let's see if we can top our Europa League group with our last fixture in Rotterdam. We just need a draw to do so, but Feyenoord are going to make it difficult for us and their counter-attack is finished with a goal. However, with plenty of time remaining, we progress possession down the left-hand side and Cristante fires home an equaliser. And it's straight to Bergamo for a surprise top-of-the-table clash against Gasparini's Atalanta, without top scorer Tammy Abraham, who isn't fit enough to start. And that clearly proved costly, as Atalanta were much the better side, scoring immediately after half-time from Duvan Zapata. We pushed for an equaliser, but Atalanta are a cracking side and Toloi scored a second, and we take our first loss of the season. Still without Tammy, we beat Verona 2-1 before the World Cup break, but our eyes are already set on the return, with Juventus and Inter Milan being the first 2 matches. Our lead for now is cut down to just 2 points. The first few managers departed, including Tottenham, but that's not a job for me, thanks. They currently sit in 8th place. Barcelona currently top Spain, PSG in France, but it's Leipzig in front in the Bundesliga with Bayern sat in 3rd. But this was my reaction to who won the World Cup. Because Senegal beat Germany in the final. I'm not even joking. They knocked out Wales, France and Portugal on their journey to the final as well. England were knocked out by the Netherlands in the second round, probably because they weren't playing Tammy. Anywho, it's January and so many clubs want him after his 30 goals this season. In fact, we have loads of offers coming in, including for Pellegrini too, who's having a great season as well. I reject all of them, including this embarrassing attempt by Inter Milan to buy Mancini. We return to the Serie A with a draw against Juventus. We conceded the opener by Rabiot and relied on 19-year-old Australian Volpato, who scored the equaliser and got man of the match. We got the same result against Inter Milan as well. Back on track though with a 3-1 win against Udinese and another 2 goals from Tammy Abraham. In fact, he scored another 5 in the following 2 games, including 2 in the cup. We are back in form. Wrong! We lose 1-0 to Salernitana. After another draw to Empoli, we face a difficult February with Inter Milan in the cup next and league games against Napoli and Lazio. And we've dropped to 4 points behind Atalanta at the top of the table, while Juventus could seriously get relegated this season. It was snowing in Milan and in the freezing cold weather, you still can't stop Tammy Abraham. However, you also can't stop Inter Milan slicing through your defence and equalising. And with this Coppa Italia matchup being rather important to Glory Hunter, I was worried when Thomas Lemar scored a second. However, just before half-time, Dybala pulled it back to 2-2 and in this cup tie, it went to extra time, where of course it was Tammy Abraham who notched his second and knocked out Inter Milan. The Thomas Lemar transfer to Inter Milan reminded me that this is Glory Hunter. We need to be keeping an eye on the world of transfers as well, like this one with Unai Simon going to Newcastle and Man City making some very odd signings. We followed our great triumph in the cup with a draw to Sassuolo. But with the tough games coming up, we were at our best again, like this 2-0 win over Napoli. Tammy Abraham with the first goal, of course, and then a rocket was struck by substitute Matic. It was derby time and once again Tammy meets a near post corner after only 3 minutes. And we can take the bragging rights this season because Brian Cristante scored a second just after 15 minutes. Nemanja Matic didn't score a rocket in this game, but he did get himself a straight red card. Typical. Turned out to be a great month with 2 other wins and no goals conceded in our last 4 games, with AC Milan, the champions, up next. We have been drawn against Marseille in the Europa League and also have Milan in the Coppa Italia too. And we are back to just 2 points behind Atalanta. But then it all started to go wrong. Well, the Milan game wasn't too bad. Dybala gave us the lead, but the champions came back just after 5 minutes and played great football and equalised. But it was the Marseille game that was the big problem. Tammy Abraham, with no one around him, pulled up with an injury. That was just 4 minutes in as well, but we fortunately still had players on the pitch who could score goals, but Marseille still managed to bag another equaliser. And Tammy's injury is a bad one, tearing his quad, which puts him out for the rest of the season. In the second leg against Marseille, they took the lead from kickoff as well, but thankfully Tammy's replacement Belotti stepped up, and even though he hasn't had a lot of game time this season, he has still looked sharp. He scored an equaliser and a winner in this 2-1 win, but I still fear for our rest of the season. We already dropped 2 more points against Monza, and we have Milan in the Coppa Italia next, and Napoli in Europa League. Oh, Milan, they absolutely battered us, knocking us out of the Coppa Italia. And we even lost in the league to Spezia. But what a game against Napoli, and what a performance from Dybala, who got that crazy assist. Unfortunately, we couldn't clear our lines though, and Napoli got a deserved equaliser. And when the second half kicked off, they put themselves ahead. But again, Dybala came up with a beautiful assist for Andrea Belotti to make it 2-2. And to crown off his performance, he then scored a wonderful finish, and it's 3-2 in the first leg. Napoli started the second leg, bringing the score back to 3-3 on aggregate. But Andrea Belotti stepped up once again, and he scored 2 goals, sending us into the semi-final of the Europa League. In the league, we still trail Atalanta in this mad title race by 3 points, with Inter Milan right behind us breathing down our next. And our next fixture is Atalanta. The Europa League draw gave us a tricky tie against Manchester United, but our focus should have been on this league match first, which maybe I'd question wasn't the case, because Atalanta came to the Stadio Olimpico and pretty much dominated the match, and Rasmus Højlund got 2 goals himself. He's been on form this season with 14 goals in just 9 starts and is wanted by so many clubs across Europe. And that loss affected us, and we dropped more points against Juventus. Considering our defence has kept so many clean sheets this season, we were very poor against Inter Milan. Thankfully though, we pulled the game back to 1-1 through Volpato. We then lost 7-1 to Manchester United. Although we did pick up some league wins heading towards the end of the season, Atalanta won that title race with a game remaining, and we bow out of the cup competitions in the semi-finals. After beating Empoli in what seems like a bit of an underwhelming end of the season on the final day, we actually came with just a point behind the champions, who win the Scudetto for the very first time. And Tammy Abraham, who hasn't played a league game since February, finished the league top scorer. But hold on for just 1 second, because I take a gander at the job centre, and AC Milan are currently looking for a manager. Do we risk the move just a season into Glory Hunter, or do we stay with Roma?